Well, I think Hughie is a masterpiece by Eugene O'Neill, even though it's only an hour long. I think it's sort of a remarkable achievement. Brian Dennehy brilliantly plays the role of ERIE Smith, who's a sort of down-on-his-luck gambler who sort of has been living in this hotel for about 20 years. And we find in the course of the evening that he is mourning, that he's mourning the loss of his perhaps best and only friend, a man named Hughie, who was the desk clerk, who has passed away and has sent ERIE on a sort of drinking bender. And now ERIE has returned to the lobby. There's a new hotel clerk, played by Joe Grafazzi. And the two men enter into a sort of reluctant conversation that reveals their loneliness. There's also a tremendous amount of humor in this play. I think it's one of O'Neill's funniest plays, using a lot of New York language of the 1920s. But it really reveals a sort of need for human connection. It's a very unusual role for Brian, because a lot of the plays that Brian and I have done have been these very big guys, these big presences, these almost kingly characters, even in the O'Neill canon. And in this particular play, it's about a small man. And so I think Brian, with his size and with his stardom, with his charisma, is quite moving in this part, because you see him sort of gradually unpeeling the layers away as we slowly get down to the core of this man, ERIE, who is sort of a very simple, frightened guy who's stayed in the same hotel room for like 20 years, who's actually sort of frightened of life. He's frightened of leaving. And I think Brian is incredibly moving in the performance. We also had a chance to work on it in Stratford, Canada this past summer, where it was an absolute sensation and one of the great hits of the Shakespeare Festival up in Stratford, Canada. And I think for Brian and I, O'Neill is just someone who, the more you work on it, the deeper you delve into it, the better it gets. And it's a character which Brian loves, he understands deeply, and it's a character that he was drawn to. In many ways, the entire double bill of Hughie and KRAPP'S Last Tape was conceived by Brian Dennehy. It was his idea, really. He had been working on the O'Neill. He'd had great success here at the Goodman. And he was interested in working on Samuel Beckett's great play, KRAPP'S Last Tape. Well, KRAPP'S Last Tape by Samuel Beckett is simply one of the profound works of the 20th century. It's again, like Hughie, and what relates it is it's a very brief play. We see a man sort of shuffle on, a sort of guy who seems almost a bit derelict. It's almost a bit clownish, eating bananas, perhaps drunk, certainly disheveled. And he puts a couple of tapes on a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and we realize that he's listening to himself at the age of 29, recording his memories of his birthday. And we see this guy, KRAPP, who we discover is a failed writer, whose life has sort of deteriorated again into sort of nothingness, looking back with some sense of despair and regret, and again, considerable humor. It's directed by one of Canada's foremost young directors, a really exciting woman named Jennifer Tarver from Toronto, who has a considerable reputation in a very exciting theater season and a very exciting theater city like Chicago, Toronto. She's done a lot of work on the plays of Samuel Beckett. She was introduced to this play again at the Shakespeare Festival in Stratford, Canada last summer. And she's created a very quintessential Beckett play, sort of stripped of everything but really the actor, Brian Dennehy, a desk and a tape recorder and a sort of single light on him. And it's a very, very moving production. So I think an audience will go away having seen a very exciting double bill of great plays by one of our greatest actors in two of the great roles written for a great actor. And I think they'll go away moved and entertained, and I think it'll be a terrific addition to our season.